Secretary Hegseth invited all generals to a meeting. This is unprecedented. I don't think it's ever happened before. And they all came in, and they all sat in a big lecture room, and Hegseth and then President Trump got up and gave them a talk. It was fascinating to watch, right? First, the general sat in silence. There was no cheering, clapping, nothing. Not the beginning of the talk, not the middle, not in the end. I think it completely shook Trump. He's not used to this. They just sat there stone-faced and did not respond to what he said. And I think he felt really, really weird about that. Anyway, Hegseth went out and gave this passionate speech, parts of which I agree with, doing away with stupid rules of engagement. But it was all done in this condescending, Fox Newsy, I know better than you, this is the way we should fight wars in the future kind of way. Probably not the best way to change attitudes among generals in your military. If you really want to change the rules of engagement, you've got to change what's being taught at West Point. You've got to change how these generals think about war. There was no grand theory delivered here. There was no perspective on, well, what is going to replace the rules of engagement. There was no engagement with the ideas of just war theory and what should replace just war theory and how one should conduct oneself in a war. So I agree with the sentiment, but not with the way Hegseth delivered it and not what he means by it. Part of it is that, does he mean by it that the United States military should act like the Russian military? Rape, pillage, where it goes? That's hopefully not what he means, but he didn't say what he means. He left it as an empty nothing. So it landed up being meaningless and stupid, and the generals in the room knew that and know that. Well, what's the alternative? Lay out something. And that should be something that should have been prepared in writing in advance, should have been handed out, should have been presented. Hegseth then called out the military for its lack of physical preparedness, and this is something, again, I agree with. He said that fat generals and fat soldiers were an embarrassment. I agree with that. Also, I would add fat, and I said this during BLM, fat policemen. The police we need to get the police up to physical standards. But yeah, the military should be in shape. He also eliminated kind of the gender bias in physical training, which I agree with. That is, it should be a male-based standard. If a woman can make that, if a woman can achieve that level of fitness, great. But it should be whatever the combat demands in terms of fitness. So, again, I agreed with the sentiment. But he said it in, again, an insulting, stupid kind of way to a bunch of generals there. He really is he's a Fox commentator. And these are people who are lifetime in the military. There's probably a much, much better way to make the case for both of those things and for everything he wanted to address there. And the basic things that actually seemed like they made sense, other than this way, right? Other than this way. So that was Hegseth. A lot of what he said, I agreed with. Didn't like the way he said it. Didn't think it was the appropriate means and appropriate place to express these ideas and to lecture to a bunch of generals about them. Then came up Trump, and Trump, of course, I think is losing it. I don't think he's cognitively completely there. He rambled for an hour. All over the place. A lot of it incoherent. But by the way, part of his meeting with Netanyahu was just embarrassing. I mean, he went on and on and on about how this conflict is a conflict of not just decades, of centuries, really. And he said, really, 5,000 years, thousands of years, this has been going on. He really doesn't know what he's talking about. And I don't think he knows he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know enough to know how stupid what he says is. And everybody is so used to his stupidity or to the ignorance that he expresses that nobody even calls him out on it. Like, if any other president had said something like that, this conflict is hundreds of years and thousands of years, people would have said, no, that's ridiculous. There's no conflict. I mean, Israel didn't exist hundreds of years ago. Palestinians, Arabs, I mean, none of this existed. Biblical land, this is very different. This isn't the same conflict. Conflicts back then were Romans and Greeks and all kinds of stuff. But nobody calls him on these things because he does it all the time. He says so many wrong things per minute that you can't correct them all. So people don't bother anymore. So let's not focus on all the BS that he said during this talk. We'll focus on what he said that was coherent and what is scary. Because what he basically told the generals was, I want you to start focusing on this new strategy that we have. And the new strategy that we have is America first. And that means we need you, the military, to focus your efforts on defending the United States, not from enemies from outside, but from the enemies within. The war that is being waged is a war from within. He's telling the U.S. military, I'm going to be using you to go after domestic enemies. And again, this is always vague and ambiguous in terms of what he means. But you can see what he means. You can see it. You can see it in cities all over the United States today, with ICE and National Guard troops all over the place. You can see it with Black Hawk helicopters being used to attack supposedly illegal immigrants, but maybe some U.S. citizens get caught up in the crosshairs. Who cares? I mean, it's all for the good cause of deporting immigrants. If a few American citizens lose their rights, why are we getting so excited about it? What he really means is the militarization of American streets. What he really means is the bringing in the American military onto American streets to fight an invisible enemy, an enemy that doesn't have tanks and is not a huge acceleration of violence in American streets. Quite the opposite. Violence is at relatively lows right now, and decades-long lows. Is this to go after the enemy that is the Democratic Party, the enemy that is the left, the enemy that might steal the next election? So maybe we need troops outside polling places to make sure people vote the right way. What is this? This is the kind of stuff that authoritarians do. They use the military for their domestic disputes. They use the military to settle domestic rivalries. And he's now explicit about it. And the generals sat there, and it's hard to tell what they thought. A couple of them have already resigned since that meeting. Good for them. I wish they'd all in mass resign. That would have been much more effective. He said, I told Pete Hegseth, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military National Guard. Training ground for what? What are we training them for? Training for other American cities? So, Trump has now ordered federal troops to Portland, Oregon. I mean, it might have made sense to send federal troops to Portland, Oregon in 2020 when Antifa was burning down the place. But it's actually quite quiet now in Portland, Oregon. There's not a lot of violence in Portland, Oregon. It's gone back to being a fairly peaceful place. But now you're sending federal troops? To do what? Well, to create conflict. And that's indeed what they're doing. They're creating conflict. If there weren't demonstrations before in Portland, Oregon, they sure are now. His troops being there is going to guarantee that. So, just a scary performance. Trump is just pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries. And he wants to see where he gets pushed back, and he's not getting pushed back. He's not getting real pushback anyway. I mean, they got pushback. I think they got pushback from the Jimmy Kimmel situation, right? The FCC chairman really got pushback from a lot of people on the right. A lot of commentators on the right went after the Trump administration and the FCC for the comments they made about Kimmel. So when Kimmel came back, while Trump wasn't happy about it, the FCC kind of backed off and said, oh, no, we were kidding. And that's the pushback they got. But here, they're not getting pushback from anybody. They're not getting pushback from anybody. The left, the mainstream media, which is they consider part of the left. But the right is not rising up against them. Congress is not rising up against them. He can deploy troops to any city he wants in the United States, and the right will go along with it. His fans will go along with it. Congress will go along with it. So he'll keep doing it. He'll keep doing it.